Fun, I've always wanted to do this. It was my passion when I was young. Uvanga Emily angulalik uvani Pitquhirnikkut Ilihautiniq havaktiuyunga Kitikmeot tiuyunga uvanelu hivunikavudli hamna akok na huaktak kulli Inuit Pitquhirnikkut okauhitigullu tammaktaili na huakaptigu hapkuallu havangillu talvuna havagillu agomayakkulli inutqammivut ilihautinniq hapkuallu aqujjat inutqujjatli hamanilaktillutikli taima ilihaqtuqauyugulli tamapta. My name is Emily Angulalik. I'm the Executive Director for the Pitquhirnikkut Ilihautiniq Kitikmeot Heritage Society, and one of our main goals for the Heritage Society is to promote, preserve, and to revitalize our Inuinnait language and culture.
I'm Max Friesen. I'm an archaeologist at the University of Toronto, and I've been working in Inuinnait, Canadian Arctic, for I don't know, 35 years or something, but for the last 22 I've been working with the Pitquhirnikkut Ilihautiniq Kitikmeot Heritage Society, and it's been the highlight of my career because, well, for two reasons. One is the archaeology itself is just really amazingly interesting and cool here, and we've been doing a lot of really interesting things and finding out amazing things we didn't know about the ancient history up here. But the other is that it's just adds a huge dimension to be able to work with a community organization who values my work and who wants to have the heritage explored and then to be used in ways that are useful for Inuit cultural programs and involving elders and youth, and so it's really been kind of my dream project, and I'm glad that it's still going on. Yeah, so one of the parts of this project that is that we're doing because it was a priority of the KHS is, as you know, looking at the climate change, modern climate change, and how that's affecting these heritage sites. And I know that there's a lot of concern about old sites eroding or being destroyed without us knowing enough about them. So we've been trying to look at this in different ways, but just as an example, this year we've gone to, I think, about 4 different sites that are eroding into the rivers, and we think that that eroding is happening more and more rapidly because of the warming, and because the warming is thawing the permafrost, and so it becomes unstable, and so we've been looking at it and also measuring exactly where the coast, the riverbanks are, so that we can over in the future try to figure out how threatened are these sites and how much might happen to them, and then we can talk about what should we do about it.
Yeah, thank you again for allowing the elders to take part in the Iqaluktaq trip to able to see how evident it is to see the erosion of the land, and how we see that the permafrost is just narrowing, and that's how you see with all the erosion by the river. And the elders had, they've witnessed tremendously how much the weather is warming up, and it's affecting our land, our animals as well, and that it's like, one of the elders, Annie Pannak, had said, it's so important to try and preserve these artifacts, before they're washed away.
So this is right here is exactly where the Ekaluk River starts. This lake, Tahiriwak, lets out into the river, and then it flows into Wellington Bay. And directly across on the other side, on the north side of the river, is an actual wall made out of stone. And that was probably built by the Inuinnait originally, the Dorset, who were here before Inuit. And it was almost certainly designed to get all the caribou to cross right here. So they'd follow the wall, enter the water right here, start crossing, and then people would hunt them either on the shore on this side or else from kayaks or from other small boats. So along this way, you can see this slope, and you can see it's covered in these bright flowers, and that's because this is extremely richly vegetated, because it's sitting on top of all this sort of thick layer of bones and artifacts and other organic remains that people used in the area. So we have a whole series of about 5 or 6 of these early Inuit stone houses. You can see another one right there, and then there's a few more along there. And there's also houses from the people who lived here earlier, the Inuinnait or the Dorset, and they're also here. So this is just an extremely rich slope, and I think the reason this was occupied, and actually this is based on the elders suggesting this, is that its face is slightly south. So you'd pick up some of the warmth, and also if you had like a gut skin window in the front of your house, you might be able to get a bit of light even except in the absolute depths of the winter. So right now I'm standing in a pit that was dug by an early archaeologist who was here in the 1960s, William Taylor. And with modern archaeology, well, we always backfill our pits after we dig them, but back in the day they didn't backfill. So the reason we're here is just to show you how deep this area is. So this is the area, we're not on a house, we're just downslope from the houses. So this is where all of the material, all of the garbage that people were throwing out would come. And you can just see how deep it is. I mean, even here it's probably about 40 centimeters deep, but the deepest we got about 70 centimeters. So this is important for a number of reasons. One is there's literally not a single other site in this whole Victoria Island region that has this amount of material. This just shows you how intense the occupation was in the past. So this site is so important because this area of all the cultural material, all the animal bones people hunted, all the artifacts, is just so deep. And unlike almost everywhere else in the world, in the Arctic, it's preserved almost perfectly because it's been frozen since it was first deposited by the people who were here. So in this midden, where this area, where in some cases it's 50, 60 centimeters deep, the bottom parts of that have been frozen sometimes for over 1,000 years. And what that means is it's just perfectly preserved. When we were digging, we got wooden artifacts that were just perfect. We got bone artifacts that were just perfect. If they were on the surface, they would just decompose. They would just fall apart. But when we get them in the soil, in the permafrost, they're in beautiful shape. So one of the real problems that we're aware of, and that archaeologists around the north are aware of, is that with global warming, with longer summers and hotter summers, the top level of the soil that thaws out every year gets deeper and deeper. So now at the end of the summer, it's probably thawing, I don't know exactly how much, but maybe 10 centimeters deeper than it did, a few decades ago. And eventually the whole thing is going to thaw. And what that means is all of this culture, all of this history of Inuit in the area is going to start falling apart, start decomposing. So what we are thinking of trying to do here is to do a type of research that our colleagues in Greenland have been doing, which is to insert special probes into the soil so that we can see how the temperature is changing year to year and how the permafrost is thawing, how deep is the thawing going, How deep do you have to go before it's frozen? And also we can tell other things like, is there microorganisms down there that are eating away at the bone and the other artifacts? So we are thinking of trying to do that within a year or two, and set up right here, because again, this is the deepest midden in the whole region. So, and maybe the most important site, because there's just so much material. So this would be a very good example to use, and an important site to know how quickly is it being destroyed by issues relating to climate change. Okay, we're now at a site that's been named the Buchanan site, and this is one of the earliest and another very important site here at Inuinnait, but it's important for much earlier periods. So what we have here is the earliest of the Inuinnait who were here before the people that met Inuit. So right down over here, there's a big flat area, and that was occupied around 1,500 years ago by people that archaeologists call Middle Dorset. So it's quite old, and that's a very rich area. There's a lot of bones, a lot of artifacts, and we're going to talk more about it later, but it's also eroding quite rapidly into the river. But the interesting thing here is that there's earlier material as well, going all the way up the slope to the top of the hill. And as you go higher and higher, the sites get older and older. And the reason is that currently the land is rising, so the ocean level is lowering at the same pace. So that means the oldest sites are higher up and farther inland, and the youngest sites are further downslope and closer to the ocean. So we have the Middle Dorset stuff here that's about 1,500 years old, and up at the top we have some sites that are called Pre-Dorset that are 3,000 years old, so much earlier. So I'm seeing a lot of bone here, and you can see how it's really just falling into the river. This has been eroding for centuries, but we think it's probably speeding up because of climate change, because the permafrost is thawing, and so it's destabilizing it. But I'm seeing a lot of caribou bone along here. People were really hunting caribou in this Middle Dorset period. And in the past we found a lot of artifacts along here too, like harpoon heads, stone tools. So there's caribou bones. There's a stone flake that would have been used for cutting by Dorset people. You can see here's a really big chunk of the edge of the land that's just about to fall down the slope, and this is just full of artifacts and bones. So we excavated, right here, a tent, and I actually don't remember exactly, but it probably came out to about here. So we excavated this so we could rescue it, basically, because it was obviously about to fall down. So that was in 2010, I think. So it's 12 years later. So that looks like it's moved about ½ a meter in that time. The coast has probably moved back about the bluff edge about that much, but we think it's accelerating. We're on this eroding bluff of this very important Middle Dorset site. And as we go along, there's a lot of bone. Most of it's caribou, like here's a little bit of caribou bone, that's from a leg bone. But there's also artifacts, and we just found this, which is a harpoon head. And it's a very small type of harpoon head that has a blade and a line hole, and this is Middle Dorset. And this is one of the artifacts that I got the most important information from the elders in the KHS, because the archaeologists who worked here before weren't sure if these ones were used for hunting caribou or for fishing. But I do remember Analik specifically telling me it had to be fish. They even used these for fish before. It's just too small and too weak to be used for hunting caribou, but it's perfect for fish. So the interesting thing is we get literally hundreds of these along the riverbank. So that means Middle Dorset people who were fishing here were probably, instead of using spears, instead of using fish spears, they were probably doing almost all their fishing with these little tiny harpoons. But we'd never know that if we weren't working with the elders who, you know, have insights into ancient technology and into the best ways to hunt and the best ways to fish and how to live on the land. So this is just one small example of one of the probably dozens of artifacts that every year are disappearing down this slope into the river, and that we're a little worried that this is going to be happening more quickly now because of climate change. Okay, great. Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, let's do the other line and then we can, I'll get my notes out. Oh, yeah, I do have my notes. And we can do GPSs. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. So if we come back next year and there's only the 10-meter one, we're in trouble. Okay. Okay, and then the other couple.
Ipakani ikaluktu mungaw kalwakapta nuna mungaw kalwakapta kukamot tamna tahap kwallo hauni piminit initoklilo yukkaraktulli kukamot tahap kwattaok hapumigya kakaloaktunay. Kanoklitam na ihumagipyuk ikaluktum.
Iyukakakbagtup kanok.
Nuna unak palada kami ay.
Unak palada kami. Titkatak pakutik na bibagunak yun anong kakahangan. Una ba doon, ingirote ba doon? Iya.
Iya.
Ingirote kami na makangakalo. Kablo na kang nagkaroang manam na. Iya.
Tahap kwalo yukkaraktulli kukamot.
Iya, yukkaraktulli mayutap kwa. Pukuglugin. Initoklan mo. Inipaglugin. Ibreungin na kayo.